Welcome to Successful Philanthropy. I'm your host, Jean Shafiroff. This show is designed to highlight the work of leaders here in the United States and then beyond. Today with us, a wonderful woman. Her name, New York State Assemblywoman Rebecca Seawright. Let's all welcome Rebecca. And Rebecca, it is wonderful to have you back on Successful Philanthropy. Rebecca, I want to start with where we are today. We're in New York. We're seeing that this pandemic, everything seems to be much, much better. Here we are, end of October 2021. Where are we going now with this pandemic?
Well, thank you, Jean, and it's such a privilege and pleasure to be back on your show, Successful Philanthropy, and I just appreciate so much all that you do with your charity and your leadership. So thank you. I think we're seeing New York City bouncing back. Our schools are back in session, our galas are back happening, and things are opening up. And so as we move even further beyond this pandemic, my office is offering a booster clinic free to residents of the Upper East Side and Roosevelt Island, the booster of Pfizer and the third dose of Moderna on Friday, November 5th and November 12th, backed by popular demand. It does book out. We're offering these free booster shots for anyone that wants to call the office and sign up. So as we continue to move forward and move out of this pandemic, I think New York is strong. We survived 9/11, Storm Sandy, and so many other things. We will get past the pandemic and we will move forward. It's a very exciting time. We have a new governor at the state level. We'll have a new mayor coming in January, a new city council. So from a government perspective, I think we are energized to usher in these new leaders and continue to focus on bringing New York City back.
Yes, and Rebecca, I recently read that China was bracing itself for a new variant of the virus. And I haven't read much about that, but I did read that. And I'm wondering, what are your thoughts on that? And are we worried about that here in the United States?
I think we have to be prepared. And, you know, we've seen that this virus is mutating. And so working with our drug companies nationally, partnering with private corporations and the public sector, we can be prepared in getting out the booster shot. And we've hosted 3 booster shot clinics that literally booked out. And so we're partnering with Drug Mart to offer these 2 vaccines November 5th and November 12th to try to get the booster out there and be prepared for what the future brings. And so we have new leadership in place, both at the federal, the state, and coming in at the local level in January. So I'm confident that we're going to be better prepared, and we're learning from our sister countries what they're doing, and we're implementing here and putting in safeguard measures.
Rebecca, you've been an elected official since 2014. Tell me, what were you doing before then?
So before I was elected to office in 2014, I was an administrative law judge and assistant prosecutor with the district attorney's office, and was serving on Community Board 8 as a volunteer, and got a phone call out of the blue from Judith Hope, from Eleanor's Legacy, and Sonia Osorio, the head of the National Organization for Women. And they said, there's 4 guys running for the state assembly. A woman has never held this seat on the Upper East Side, and would like to have you consider running for the position. My predecessor had been brought up on sexual harassment charges. And so I remember thinking at the time that I would consider running, and other elected officials encouraged me to do so. And so here we are, almost 8 years later.
And recently you were appointed to a new position on the Assembly. What exactly was that position, and what are you doing now?
So previously I held the position of chair of the Women's Legislative Caucus within the Assembly, in addition to the other committees that I sit on. And this summer, Speaker Hastie appointed me to chair the steering committee for the New York State Assembly. It's a great honor to head the steering committee. And as we move into session in January, I look forward to having issues come before the committee that we can resolve. So look forward to really exercising that leadership position.
Rebecca, you've been working on women's rights for a long, long time. And where are you now with what you've been doing?
So I am the lead sponsor of the Equal Rights Amendment, the Equality Bill in the New York State Assembly. We've passed it several times unanimously in the Assembly. It still needs to pass the Senate. Because it's a constitutional amendment to update our state constitution, we would need to pass it in 2 successive sessions, and then it would be put on the ballot before the voters as a referendum.
And what do you think?
And, you know, Jean, I was just going to say, our former United States Supreme Court Justice Ruth Bader Ginsburg said, we're never going to have complete equality until women are recognized in the Constitution. Every constitution around the globe recognizes women in the Constitution. Ours does not. So by updating our New York State Constitution, I think this will give us momentum to finally get it done at the federal level as well.
And I find it surprising that it's not part of the New York State Constitution or part of the federal Constitution. What can we as civilians do to get this passed and moving forward?
So I think it's very important to write your legislator and ask them to sign on in support of the bill as a co-sponsor, and come to Albany and go to Washington on lobby days and let your elected officials hear from you and how important it is. You know, we're not half of a person as a woman. We all have significant others and daughters and nieces, and we want females recognized in the New York State Constitution, as well as our transgender women.
I think it's all very, very important. Now, Rebecca, we're in the middle of early voting. How important is it for those watching this show to go out and vote? Because many people say, oh, my vote's not going to count. It's not going to make a difference. So I'm just going to stay home and forget this election. But just how important is it for everyone to get out there and vote? I think it's very important. And most people, I would think it's very important, but there is a group that thinks, well, my vote doesn't matter.
You know, Jean, we think of New York State as a progressive state, and we want it to be a model around the country for our voting laws. And so we've instituted a number of changes to the election process, but we still have so far to go. So what you'll see on the ballot is one amendment that lets you register to vote online, which they have in a number of other states. But early voting in person has started October 23rd to Halloween, October 31st. It will begin this Saturday, and there'll be different times. And so you can go on the Board of Elections website, or you can call our office at 212-288-4607, and we will tell you where your early voting site is. So Saturday, October 23rd, it's from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. And then there's also 7 a.m. to 4 p.m., which it switches to on the 25th, but it runs every single day, either starting at 8 a.m., 7 a.m., or 10 a.m. And again, we have that schedule up until Halloween, where you can go to your local assigned place and cast your vote early. As you vote for the next person that's going to become the New York City mayor, a very important general election, flip the ballot over, and there'll be 5 amendments on the other side. And so we ask people, make a plan. If you're a senior or you're on a permanent absentee list, you've likely already received your absentee ballot in the mail, and you're eligible to send that back as long as it's received by November 2nd. So we actually are encouraging people, make a plan about how you plan to cast your ballot. Are you a permanent absentee ballot holder where you don't have to request your ballot, it automatically comes? Or do you want to participate in the 10 days of early voting where you just show up at your assigned location? You can also, if you've requested an absentee ballot because you expect to be out of town or out of the country on November 2nd, or you've got surgery, you know you'll be in the hospital and incapacitated, and you've received your absentee ballot because of a special excuse, you can actually take it during the 10 days of early voting and drop it in a box at the voting site. So there's several ways, or you can actually go on November 2nd when the polls open at 6 a.m. till 9 p.m. at night and cast your vote. So we ask people, make your plan. If you're elderly or disabled and it's pouring rain on November 2nd, we want you to consider taking advantage of the 10 days of early voting, and then you don't have to be concerned about, well, what's the weather going to be like on November 2nd?
Yes, and I think no matter what, no matter how you vote, just get out there and vote. Now, Rebecca, New York City has been confronted with a lot of crime during this COVID-19 pandemic, and then immediately following the George Floyd killing. And as we look forward, do you see the crime coming to or being reduced? I wouldn't say coming to a halt, nothing ever comes to a halt, but do you see a crime going down, and what can we do as civilians to encourage our public officials to look at the crime and really help so that people are safe on the streets?
Well, that's such an important question, Jean. And like I said, we're going to have new leadership and practically a new city council and a new mayor coming in at the city level. And so if we look at Manhattan and Roosevelt Island and the outer boroughs, both of our candidates on the Republican line and the Democratic line have extensive security backgrounds. One of them was a former police detective, and the other's been long involved in security issues. So I'm not going to tell people how to vote or which candidate for mayor, but what I will say is that they both have a security background. And I think as we approach the holidays, we're going to see an uptick because it's just normal in crime. But what you can do is, when you walk down the streets of Manhattan, try not to have on a lot of jewelry or a purse or something that's going to attract you to someone that is out there that's looking to rob a person. And as we approach the holidays, be extremely cautious of scams, people standing in front of department stores looking for people to take advantage of. Just be alert and conscious when you're on the streets of New York City. I remember I was out with friends late and walking home to my apartment at 11 o'clock at night, and I was very conscious of who's on the sidewalk with me, who's following me, where are they going, are they trying to approach me and speak? So just be very, very conscious that we have seen since the pandemic an uptick in crime. And what you can do is be very, very conscious. If you're walking with a purse, keep your cell phone out of your purse. Keep it in your pocket. So if a person were to yank your purse away from you, you've got your cell phone in a separate location on you. But I think that as we continue to move out of the pandemic, we're going to see, with the holidays approaching, an uptick in crime of all levels, telephone crimes targeting our seniors. But what we can do is pick up the phone, dial 311 or 911 and report something suspicious that you see. So they will dispatch a SWAT team out to check out that location in the city.
I think that is excellent advice. And I particularly like your advice of keeping your cell phone separate from your pocketbook so that if your pocketbook is stolen, you'll still have a cell phone. Something I never really thought about. But whether you live in New York City or you live outside of the city, being vigilant about crime is key. And I think don't stay out too late, because when it gets dark, I think it's just a time when more and more people are out doing things that they're not supposed to be doing. Meaning if someone wants to engage in a crime, well, if it's dark, it might be easier for that individual to attack another individual or demand a pocketbook or a wallet. And then also just be careful, like Rebecca said, look behind you, look to the side of you, walk fast. I like to wear sneakers. This way, if I need to run, well, I can run a little faster. Rebecca, looking forward, as we move out of this pandemic, are people going back to work or are people staying home? What are you seeing exactly?
You know, I'm seeing a combination of both. Jean, last night, our local community board aide here on the Upper East Side, I spoke to them on reproductive rights, but before me, there was a speaker in a session on working from home virtually versus working in the office and Zoom etiquette and what you need to consider in your decision-making process about whether you're going to work virtually on Zoom or whether you're going to travel back to your office. And I think it just depends on what exactly the field is that you're in. And I know I recently heard that New York City was going to save millions of dollars because they're not renewing leases on office space for employees that can adequately and efficiently work from their home. So in that regard, it's saving the government money. But then I think also in my line of business in Albany, we're used to having advocacy groups and wonderful busloads of students come and lobby their legislator on behalf of their particular interest. And that's just something that I don't know that we're ready with COVID yet to have busloads coming to Albany to the Capitol. The last time we were in session, 2 more legislators came down with COVID that had been vaccinated. So we're still not out of this pandemic and we still have a ways to go.
And are people resisting going back to work?
I think it depends on who you talk to and again, what field of business they're in. Certainly all the medical doctors have come back and are seeing people in their offices. But then again, I've also heard of people that are having televisits with their physicians. So I think it's just important to really analyze, you know, the line of business that you're in. Zoom in some fields can be very, very adequate way of communicating and holding meetings. I mean, today we're able to do this via Zoom and not in the TV studio. And it just depends on what the issue is and what the field is.
And many people are worried about inflation. We're hearing that prices of food are going up, prices of fuel are going up. And what this translates to most people is, well, they just don't have enough money to live. What are your thoughts on inflation? And is there anything we can do to help reduce inflation?
Well, Jean, you have been a model of generosity in the number of charities and boards that you sit on. And so I think it's so important that in a time of a pandemic that we help our neighbor and we help those that are struggling. One of the things that our office has done is teamed up with the Stanley Isaacs House to help deliver meals to the shut-in and to the elderly. We do a free PPE, mask, and hand sanitizer distribution on Thursdays here on York Avenue out of our community office, still giving the public PPE materials. And so I think it's just so important that we help our neighbor and that we help people that are in need.
No question. For those who have resources, well, there's a responsibility to give. But what we're seeing across the board now is that people who are living as middle-class people or living at or below poverty, well, they're being particularly hard hit. And what's so important for all the charities is that everyone try to participate the best you can. And so, Rebecca, what is a favorite charity of yours?
That's a great question. One of my favorite charities is helping senior citizens because I feel they've lived their life in service to others. And we're so appreciative of the elderly community. And so, Jean, I know recently you were honored by healthcare advocates that provide so many wonderful services to our senior community. So I think one of my favorite charities is the various organizations, Search and Care, that help senior citizens remain in their homes, that offer computer assistance. Many seniors have trouble operating their cell phone. So they'll partner with local high schools and send a high school student in to help a senior citizen that has an issue with their computer or their email or their cell phone. And so there's just so many ways that we can be helpful with our charities.
Yes, and Rebecca, the charity you were referring to that helps people of age is Health Advocates for Older People. And they do tremendous work in New York City and then the 5 boroughs. Now, Rebecca, we have a few minutes left. And what advice are you giving to those in your constituency, people you know, about how to move forward as we move into 2022? I'm sure you think it's still important to wear a mask regardless of whether you're vaccinated, especially when you're inside. But what advice do you want to give to those in your election group or your district?
So, that's a wonderful question, Jean. And I would just say, try to be persistent in being prepared, whether it's being prepared with your voting plan or being prepared on walking down the street late at night if you do encounter some kind of criminal activity and towards yourself or towards others, and reporting it. And check on your neighbors, check on your senior citizens, and make sure that the shut-in are well. Stay optimistic, wear a mask, get a booster shot if you've had the first 2 and you qualify, and get involved in your community and volunteer. There's so many wonderful charities out there, and you can be involved so many different ways.
And that's all very good advice. Finally, Rebecca, what advice do you give to young people who might just be starting a career? And then what advice would you give to someone who wants to have a career in government?
Wonderful questions, Jean. The first thing that I would say is, if you want to be involved in government, do an internship for a government official. I worked for Ann Richards when she was running for governor of Texas and then became governor of Texas. And, it was just such a valuable learning experience that when I was sought out to run for the state legislature, it was a no-brainer because I knew what a legislator had done and I'd had that valuable experience in the state house. And then the second piece of advice I would give to our young people is be prepared. There is no substitution for preparedness. And so if it means getting up an extra hour earlier in the morning to be prepared for whatever it is that you have on your schedule that day, whether you're going in for your first job interview or a big project, just be really, really prepared. There's no substitution for that. And if you're looking for an internship, to our young viewers out there, you can reach out to our office. We have a fabulous intern program both in Albany and in our district office.
I like your advice, and I always say to young people, get out there, get a good education. Education opens many doors. Also, if college isn't for you, well, maybe a trade school is, and never underestimate the type of career that you could have just because you don't go to college. You could become a plumber, an electrician, a hairdresser, and many people start very lucrative businesses first by becoming a hairdresser or becoming a plumber. All of a sudden, you may want to open up your own business, and who knows, you may become the next Jeff Bezos or even beyond. So thank you very much, Rebecca. This has really been a wonderful interview. And I want to thank all of you for watching Successful Philanthropy. This concludes Successful Philanthropy. Today's guest, Rebecca Seawright. She is a New York State Assemblywoman. I'm Jean Shafiroff, your host. I'll see you next week.